I remember well the first time I saw Mr. Ernest in the office. He was a cheerful man in his 70s who complained that lately it was hard for him to follow conversations. He told me, laughing, that he thought people had started speaking more softly, or maybe that the television no longer worked like it used to. But as we talked, I realized that what he was losing wasn't just hearing. He was losing memories. Not many people know it, but memory and hearing are much more connected than we imagine. Our brain not only stores sounds, it also associates them with faces, places, and emotions. Every word we hear is a stimulus that activates entire networks of neural connections. When we hear well, our mind stays awake, active, exercising every second. But when we stop hearing clearly, the brain begins to receive less information, and little by little it starts to dim. What happened to Mr. Ernest wasn't something sudden. First he stopped taking part in lively conversations, then he began to avoid family gatherings, and, over time, he started to forget important details. Birthdays, appointments, even the names of people he'd known for decades. It wasn't that his memory was failing on its own, but that his brain, deprived of auditory stimulus, was working with fewer resources. Today I want to talk to you precisely about that. How hearing loss can become a silent enemy of your memory. We're going to explore why it happens, which early signs deserve attention, and above all, what you can do starting today to protect not only your to hear, but also your mind and your memories. You don't need medical knowledge or expensive equipment to start taking care of yourself. I'll give you practical, easy-to-apply tips that can make a big difference in your life or in the life of someone you love. Before we continue, tell me, where are you listening from? I'll love reading you in the comments. The surprising connection between ear and memory. Our brain is an extraordinary organ, and one of its most astonishing talents is the ability to transform the sounds that reach our ears into memories, emotions, and mental images. Every time you hear a familiar voice, a song, or the sound of rain, your brain doesn't just identify that sound, it links it with past experiences, with feelings, and with information you've already stored. When the ear captures sound waves, they travel through the ear canal and make the eardrum vibrate. Those vibrations are transmitted through tiny little bones in the middle ear until they reach the cochlea in the inner ear. There, thousands of tiny hair cells convert those vibrations into electrical signals. And that's when something magical happens. Those signals travel along the auditory nerve and reach the brain's auditory cortex, where they're interpreted and associated with previous memories and knowledge. Neurologists have observed that this process stimulates many brain areas, not only those dedicated to the sense of hearing. When we listen, regions involved in attention, language, emotion, and of course memory, are also activated. In studies carried out with functional magnetic resonance imaging, it has been seen that brain activity decreases in memory areas when hearing is deficient. This means that if we hear poorly, we not only stop perceiving part of the world around us, but we are also failing to exercise the machinery that preserves our memories. Think of it this way. When someone tells you their name at a meeting, your brain must process the sound, turn it into words, and then store it in short-term memory so you can recall it later. If you don't hear well, that process is interrupted. You may think you understood the name, but if you didn't receive it clearly, your mind doesn't encode it correctly, and it's lost before you can remember it. This doesn't happen only with names. It occurs when you try to follow a conversation in a noisy restaurant or when someone gives you directions to get somewhere. If your ears don't capture the information well, your brain has to work twice as hard to fill in the gaps, and that extra effort leaves fewer resources to store the information in your memory. That's why hearing well isn't just a matter of comfort or communication. It's a direct way to keep your mind active, trained, and in shape. Just as we exercise the body so it doesn't lose strength, we need to give the brain the auditory fuel that keeps it running at its full potential. The silent beginning of the problem. Hearing loss rarely arrives all at once. In most cases, it settles in slowly, almost on tiptoe, and that's why it's so easy to overlook. At first, it's small details, a word that isn't fully understood, a sentence that seems spoken in a low voice, a sound you used to distinguish that now blends with others. The person who suffers from it often justifies it with simple explanations. That young man talks too fast. This cafe is always too noisy. The television must have a worn-out speaker. And because those justifications seem reasonable, the problem keeps advancing without anyone facing it. I remember the case of Teresa, a woman of 74 years who came to the office accompanied by her daughter. Teresa insisted that her hearing was fine, but that lately people spoke as if they were murmuring. She said she had turned the television volume up a little bit to hear better, and that at family gatherings she preferred to stay in the kitchen because in the living room she hardly understood anything. According to her, it wasn't that she heard poorly, but that everyone had become less clear when speaking. That is one of our mind's first defense mechanisms, blaming the environment instead of recognizing that something in us is changing. The problem is that, without realizing it, we begin to withdraw from situations in which listening requires too much effort. First, we stop going to certain places. Then we cut down on long conversations. And in the end, we participate less, even in gatherings with those closest to us. Isolation arrives without making a sound. We don't call on the phone as much because it's uncomfortable to ask people to repeat things. At family meals, we limit ourselves to smiling and nodding, even if we don't understand half of what is said. We avoid contact with friends because we feel that talking has become exhausting. Little by little, the social circle shrinks, and with it, the opportunities to exercise the mind and memory. This distancing isn't just a change in habits, it's the beginning of a chain of consequences that affect the brain. Less interaction means fewer auditory stimuli, less data to process, fewer memories to store. And although at first it may seem that the only thing at stake is the ability to hear, we're actually also weakening the ability to remember. In the next part, we'll see how this social isolation, born of an apparently mild hearing loss, can speed up the deterioration of memory and thinking, and which signs we must not ignore in order to stop that process in time. When social isolation affects your brain, our brain is like a muscle. It needs constant exercise to stay strong. That exercise isn't just doing crosswords or reading books, but also interacting with other people, listening, responding, interpreting gestures and nuances in the voice. Each conversation is a small training session that activates memory, attention, and critical thinking. When hearing loss begins to limit those interactions, the brain receives less stimulation. And what at first seems like a social inconvenience, failing to understand everything people say, losing the thread of a chat, soon becomes a deeper problem, fewer opportunities to exercise the mind. I remember Mr. Julian, a man of 81 years, always smiling and with 1,000 stories to tell. For years he was the life of family gatherings, but little by little he began to go quiet. When you asked him something, he answered with short phrases, and he rarely started a conversation. His family thought it was tiredness, or that age had made him more reserved. The truth is that Julian could no longer keep up with the pace of conversations, especially when several people spoke at once. By avoiding participation, his brain stopped receiving stimuli that had once been part of his daily life. He no longer listened to his grandchildren's anecdotes, nor his children's jokes, nor the news discussed at the table after meals. Without those experiences, he began to forget simple details. A friend's birthday, the date of a medical appointment, the place where he had put his keys. What hurt him most was realizing that, even when he wanted to remember something, the image or the fact slipped away like water through his fingers. Social isolation not only reduces the number of new memories we create, it also erodes the ones we already have. Without conversations to reactivate them, many memories weaken. It's as if they were stored in a drawer we no longer open. And the more time passes, the harder it becomes to retrieve them. That's why human contact isn't a luxury or something secondary. It's a vital necessity to keep the brain in shape. Listening, speaking, and sharing experiences are activities that force our mind to work, and that activity is key to preventing cognitive decline. The invisible cognitive load. When we hear well, our brain distributes its energy in a balanced way. One part is dedicated to capturing the sound, another to interpreting it, and another to storing it in memory. Everything happens smoothly, without our having to think about it. But when hearing fails, this process changes, and the brain must work much harder to understand what it hears. This extra effort is called cognitive load. It's as if your brain had to work with a constant background noise. Every word you receive arrives incomplete, and to understand it, your mind must fill in the gaps, guess what's missing, and confirm whether the interpretation is correct. That extra work consumes resources that, under normal conditions, would be available to remember what has just been said. Let's use an everyday example. Imagine you're in a cafe, and someone gives you the address of a restaurant, Park Avenue number 14, second floor. If you hear clearly, you can retain the whole sentence, visualize the place, and store it in your memory. But if your hearing fails, and you only catch fragments like Park Avenue, floor, your brain starts to reconstruct the sentence. At that moment, it's no longer dedicating its energy to storing the information, but to deciphering it. The result is that, after a few minutes, the exact address slips away. This invisible cognitive load affects not only short-term memory, but also the ability to concentrate. If every conversation is a battle to understand, mental fatigue builds up. Many people with hearing loss describe the feeling of ending the day exhausted, as if they had done great physical effort, when in fact what they have done is enormous mental effort. The most worrying thing is that this process can become a vicious cycle. The harder it is to hear, the more energy the brain spends deciphering, the fewer resources remain to remember, and the more frustrating interacting becomes. That frustration leads to avoiding conversations, which in turn reduces mental stimulation, weakening memory over time. Understanding this mechanism is essential to grasp why hearing loss is not just an ear problem. It's a challenge that directly involves the mind and cognitive health. In the next part, we will dismantle some of the most common myths about hearing loss, beliefs that prevent people from seeking help in time and that, without realizing it, contribute to letting this invisible load keep growing. Myths about hearing loss. One of the greatest obstacles to treating hearing loss isn't a lack of technology or resources, but the mistaken beliefs that surround it. These myths lead many people to postpone seeking help for years, time in which the damage to memory and mental health keeps advancing without pause. The most common myth is, "It's normal at my age." It's true that hearing can decrease over the years, but the fact that something is frequent doesn't mean it's harmless. Assuming there's nothing to be done because it's just part of getting older is like accepting constant back pain without seeking relief. Hearing loss can and should be treated, and doing so in time makes the difference between maintaining a full life or slowly becoming isolated. Another widespread belief is, "I don't need hearing aids yet." Many people wait until the situation is unbearable before acting. They think that as long as they can manage by turning up the volume or asking people to repeat, there's no need to take measures. But what they don't know is that, during that time, their brain is losing stimulation, and every day that passes without receiving clear sounds, the to process and remember information is affected. It's also common to hear, "Hearing has nothing to do with memory." This idea is dangerous because it ignores the link demonstrated by multiple neurological studies. Hearing loss not only makes listening difficult, it changes the way the brain functions. Without adequate auditory stimulus, the areas devoted to memory work less, weaken, and over time can speed up cognitive decline. Putting off the solution isn't a neutral act, it's allowing the problem to advance. The longer hearing loss goes untreated, the harder it is for the brain to readapt to hearing clearly. It's like a muscle that isn't exercised for years. Even with later training, regaining lost strength will be more complicated. Breaking these myths requires clear information and real examples of people who improved their lives by acting in time. In the next part, we'll focus on how untreated hearing loss can open the door to more serious problems, such as mild cognitive impairment and dementia, and why intervening early is the best strategy to protect not only the ear, but also the mind. The role of hearing aids and technology. Hearing aids aren't simply a miniature megaphone. They are precision tools designed to give the brain back the auditory stimulation it needs to stay active. When a person begins to use them, not only does their ability to hear improve, they also regain the chance to exercise their mind through conversations, music, and the sounds of the environment. Hearing well means the brain receives complete and accurate information, which reduces the invisible cognitive load we talked about earlier. With less effort devoted to deciphering sounds, the mind can focus on processing, understanding, and remembering. This change, small as it may seem, can have a huge impact on memory and mental agility. The difference between adapting early or late to a hearing aid is notable. When the brain spends a long time without receiving clear sounds, the neural connections associated with hearing weaken. It's like a path that falls into disuse and becomes overgrown. If the hearing aid is introduced early, those roots remain active and the brain adapts quickly, regaining auditory clarity and keeping memory in good shape. In contrast, if one waits too long, recovery is slower and sometimes incomplete because some brain plasticity has already been lost. I recall the case of Carmen, a woman of 78 years who had spent more than 5 avoiding social gatherings because she got tired of not understanding what people said. Finally, and almost reluctantly, she agreed to try hearing aids. The first weeks were a challenge. She had to get used to sounds she had forgotten, like the ticking of the clock or birdsong. But after a few months, her daughter noticed a striking change. Carmen was once again taking part in conversations. She remembered details she used to forget, and she even returned to her habit of telling stories from her youth. It wasn't a sudden miracle, but the direct consequence of giving her brain back the auditory stimulus it needed. Hearing well allowed her to reactivate her social life, which in turn strengthened her memory and her mood. Today's hearing technology offers solutions that are discreet, comfortable, and increasingly customizable. From almost invisible hearing aids to devices that connect to mobile phones to improve calls and video calls, the options are broad and adaptable to different levels of hearing loss. The key is not to wait until the problem is extreme to act. Exercises to listen better and train your memory. Hearing well is a skill that, like memory, can be trained. It's not just about waiting for technology to help us, but about stimulating the ear and brain every day to keep them active. The key is to combine simple listening exercises with activities that strengthen memory. One of the most effective is repeating sentences. Ask a friend or family member to say short sentences to you at a normal tone, without exaggerating pronunciation, and try to repeat them immediately. This exercise forces the ear to capture precisely and the memory to hold the information for a few seconds. You can increase the difficulty by asking for longer sentences or with less common words. Another resource is listening to music and following the lyrics. Choose songs you like and look up the written lyrics. Listen carefully and try to follow each word. At first you may miss some parts, but with practice you'll notice your ear becomes quicker and your brain gets better at linking sound and meaning. This exercise is especially useful because it combines pleasure with training. You can also practice identifying street sounds. Go out for a walk and pay conscious attention to what you hear: the engine of a bus, a bicycle passing by, a bird's song. Then, when you get home, try to remember as many sounds as possible and the order in which you heard them. This kind of activity exercises not only the ear, but also sequential memory. Combining these auditory exercises with memory games amplifies the benefits. Games like recalling lists of words, solving puzzles, or making quick associations between images and words help the brain maintain agility and the ability to concentrate. I remember the case of Richard, a man of 69 years, who, after noticing that he was starting to lose hearing, decided to create his own daily routine. In the mornings, he listened to a couple of songs with the lyrics in hand. At midday, he took a walk, paying attention to the neighborhood sounds, and in the afternoons, he played at memorizing sequences of cards. After a few months, he not only improved his ability to follow conversations, but also noticed that he remembered phone numbers, dates, and anecdotes much more easily. There's no need to devote hours or invest in costly materials. What matters is consistency and the intention to keep the link between ear and brain active. The more you train it, the more protected your memory system will be against the effects of time and hearing loss. Diet and auditory health. Hearing doesn't depend only on the ears. Our auditory system is a complex network of nerves, blood vessels, and sensory cells that require good nutrition to function at peak performance. Taking care of what we eat not only benefits the body in general, but it can make a difference in ear health and in the brain's ability to process and remember sounds. Among the most important nutrients for this task are omega-3 fatty acids, present in fish such as salmon, sardines, and mackerel, as well as in walnuts and chia or flax seeds. These fatty acids help maintain the flexibility of cell membranes and promote blood circulation, which ensures that the delicate structures of the inner ear receive the oxygen and nutrients they need. Antioxidants such as vitamin C, vitamin E, and zinc also play an essential role. The ear is exposed to constant oxidative stress caused by noise, age, and free radicals. Antioxidants help protect the hair cells, the ones responsible for transforming sound vibrations into electrical signals that the brain interprets, slowing their wear. You can find them in fruits like oranges, kiwi fruit, and strawberries, as well as in leafy green vegetables, nuts, and seeds. The B group vitamins, especially B12 and folic acid, are fundamental for the health of the nervous system. A prolonged deficiency of these vitamins can affect the transmission of auditory signals and, in the long term, influence memory. These vitamins are found in foods such as eggs, dairy products, legumes, and whole grains. But it's not only about what we include, it's also about what we avoid. Constant exposure to loud noises is one of the ear's greatest enemies. Concerts, headphones at high volume, or noisy tools without protection can irreversibly damage auditory cells. Tobacco reduces blood flow to the inner ear and speeds the deterioration of the structures responsible for hearing. Excessive alcohol can affect both balance and hearing, in addition to altering cognitive function. A lifestyle that combines a diet rich in protective nutrients, the reduction of harmful habits, and protection against noise is one of the best investments we can make for our auditory and brain health. After all, the ear is the gateway for a large part of the memories we form. Every word, every song, every laugh we hear also feeds our memory. Medical checkups and prevention. Caring for hearing isn't something that should be left until the problem is obvious. Just as we get annual eye exams or blood pressure checks, annual hearing checkups should be part of our health routine, especially from 50 years onward, or if there is a family history of hearing loss. A hearing exam is quick, painless, and can detect problems that sometimes go unnoticed in daily life. Hearing loss is often gradual, and the brain adapts so much that we come to think everything is the same. However, an early diagnosis allows us to act before the lack of stimulation starts affecting memory and mental agility. Detecting the problem in time is like finding a small crack in a wall before it becomes a deep fissure. With the right intervention, whether through habit changes, auditory exercises, or early use of hearing aids, it's possible to prevent greater deterioration and protect cognitive health for years. When you go to the specialist, don't limit yourself to saying you hear less. Bring specific questions that help you understand your situation and make informed decisions. For example, what is the degree of my hearing loss, and at which frequency is it most noticeable? Is this loss reversible or permanent? What options exist to improve my hearing right now? How often should I repeat the exam? What changes can I make in my lifestyle to protect my hearing? These questions will not only give you clarity, but will also convey to the professional that you want to be actively involved in your hearing care. It's also advisable to keep a record of your hearing results year after year. That way you can compare and detect any change, even the most subtle ones. This ongoing follow-up makes it easier to take quick measures before a minor problem becomes a serious obstacle for your memory and your quality of life. Hearing prevention also involves maintaining a healthy environment for the ear, avoiding intense noises, using hearing protection when necessary, and taking care of diet and daily habits. Everything adds up so that hearing stays strong and the brain receives the stimulus it needs to keep functioning clearly. Amid the figures and warnings, there are also stories that light the way. Because hearing loss and its consequences don't have to be the end of an active life with good memory. Many people have shown that, with determination and the right tools, it's possible to regain not only the ability to hear, but also confidence, and mental agility. Let's take the case of Laura, 72 years old. For almost a decade, she avoided family gatherings because she felt uncomfortable not understanding what was being said. She spoke less, and little by little, began to forget details of her daily life. After a hearing checkup, she discovered she had a moderate loss in both ears. She decided to try hearing aids, and in a few months, her close circle noticed a change. Laura once again took part in conversations, laughed at jokes she previously couldn't quite catch, and got back into the habit of calling her friends to chat. She herself says that she didn't just get her hearing back, but also her place in the world. There's also Peter's experience, a man of 81, who at first rejected any technological help. He thought that at his age it wasn't worth it. However, after several worrying lapses, his granddaughter convinced him to get an evaluation. The specialist explained how the lack of auditory stimulation could affect his memory. Peter agreed to use hearing aids and began doing listening and memory exercises. After 6 months, his children noticed that he remembered dates, addresses, and even the recipes he used to cook years ago. "They didn't just give me back my hearing," he said. "They gave me back the desire to learn new things." These stories show that it's never too late to act. The brain has a surprising capacity to adapt, even at advanced ages, as long as it receives the right stimulus and support. And although every case is unique, the message is the same. Hearing and memory can be protected, and taking the step toward a solution is an investment in quality of life. If today you feel that you hear less, that you take part less in conversations, or that your memory isn't what it used to be, don't ignore it. Get a checkup, get informed, act. Perhaps in a few months, you yourself will be the protagonist of a hopeful story that inspires others. Today we have traveled a road that, although it began by talking about hearing, has actually led us to understand something much deeper. Taking care of our ears is taking care of our mind, our memories, and ultimately, our quality of life. We have seen how hearing loss is not only a physical problem, but a factor that can directly affect our memory, our ability to concentrate, and our social life. We have also learned that isolation, invisible cognitive load, and a lack of auditory stimulation can accelerate mental deterioration if we don't act in time. Throughout the video, we have reviewed early signs we must not ignore, debunked myths that prevent us from acting, and learned the importance of early intervention, whether through healthy habits, auditory exercises, medical checkups, or the use of technology such as hearing aids. We have also seen that diet, prevention, and professional follow-up are pillars for maintaining not only good hearing, but an active, protected brain. The stories of Laura, Peter, Carmen, and Richard have shown us that it's never too late to take the first step. That even after years of difficulties, with the right decision, it's possible to regain not only the ability to hear, but also the connection with others, mental agility, and self-confidence. That's why my final message is clear. Don't wait until it's too late. If you notice that your hearing is no longer the same, if you find yourself avoiding conversations, or if you feel that your memory isn't as quick as before, act today. A small change now can make a big difference in your future. I invite you to share this video with family or friends who could benefit from this information. Perhaps today we'll give them the opportunity to protect their hearing health, and with it, their most valuable memories. And now, I want to get to know you better. How many years old are you? And where are you listening from? Leave it in the comments. Your experience can inspire others and create a community of people who, like you, are determined to take care of their mind and their hearing. Remember, every sound you hear is a thread that connects you with the world and with your story. Take care of that thread, strengthen it, and don't let silence take your memories away.